Let's look at section 1.5, negative exponents. Let's start with our key concept of zero and negative exponents. Now, the great thing is, during our math minutes, during the first quarter of this school year, we worked with negative exponents. So the negative exponent aspect of this lesson should not be anything new to you. Zero exponents may be new, they may not, but we'll take a look at those. So for zero and negative exponents, any non-zero number, so any number other than zero, raised to the zero power equals 1. So if I had 2 to the 0 power, it's going to be 1. 10 to the 0 power is 1. 100 to the 0 power is 1. It does not matter what number we raise to the 0 power, it's always going to be 1. Now, any non-zero number raised to the negative n power is the multiplicative inverse of its nth power. Now that sounds a little bit difficult to understand until we look at our examples and see how we did them during our math minutes earlier this year. So if we're going to change it to its multiplicative inverse of its nth power, then 3 to the negative second is going to be 1 over 3 to the second. So all we do is make multiplicative inverse. Remember, the multiplicative inverse is 1 over that number, and you take away the negative. So c to the negative third would be 1 over c to the third power. Take just a few seconds, this should be very easy for you, and do the two practice problems, 2 to the negative fourth and a to the negative second, and then come back and let's change or continue on with our lesson. Okay, now that you have had an opportunity to do those two practice problems, let's look at writing fractions as expressions using a negative exponent other than -1. So we have 1 over 6 squared. If we're going to do this, basically all we're doing is the opposite of what we were doing before. So 1 over 6 squared is going to be 6 to the negative second. So if I had 1 over 4 squared, it would be 4 to the negative second. If I had 1 over x to the fourth, it would be x to the negative fourth. So it's just the opposite of what we've been doing all along with our negative exponents. Now this one looks a little different because 1 over 9, if you remember, is the same as 1 over 9 to the first power. But we have been told that we have to use an exponent other than -1. So we need to come up with another way to write 9 that we can change and use an exponent other than 1 or -1. So I know that I have one number that I can multiply by itself to get 9. I know that's 3. So 1 over 3 times 3. And if I write 3 times 3 with an exponent, it's going to be 1 over 3 squared. And if I write that with a negative exponent, it would be 3 to the negative second. So for another example, if we had 1 over 16, we could write that as 1 over 4 times 4 equals 1 over 4 squared, or 4 to the negative second. There's another way we could write it as well, because I know that 1 over 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 also equals 16. So 1 over 2 to the fourth equals 2 to the negative fourth. So basically this is just the opposite of what we've been doing in our math minutes. Let's take a look at the next page of our notes. On the next page, we're looking at zero exponents. And zero exponents, again, are very simple because I've already told you that anything raised to the 0 power is going to be 1. So 2 to the 0 power equals 1. X to the 0 power equals 1. Anything raised other than 0, raised to the 0 power is 1. So take just a second, pause the video, and work the two problems for practice. -5 to the 0 power and 4 to the 0 power. Okay, now that you have finished those practice problems, let's take a look at the next section of our notes. This real-world example says one human hair is about 0.001 inch in diameter. You can also read that as 1/1000th inch in diameter. It says write the decimal as a power of 10. Well, we just said that we would read this as 1/1000th. So we're going to write it 0.001 or 1/1000th as 1/1000. Now I know that we have 3 zeros here, so 1/10 to the third is the same as 1000. And if I write that with a negative exponent, it would be 10 to the negative third. Now, I want you to use this example, and I want you to look down at the practice problem. It says a grain of salt has a mass of about 1/10,000th gram. Write the decimal as a power of 10. Now, we just did this with 1/1000th. This one is just a little bit different with 1/10,000th gram. So I want you to take just a second, use your brains, use your notes, and see if you can come up with an answer to this practice problem. When you're finished, come back and we'll complete the lesson. All right, now that you have finished that problem, the next key concept that we want to look at is multiplying and dividing with negative exponents. The product of powers and quotient of powers rules can be used to multiply and divide powers with negative exponents. Now, we've already talked about the product of powers and the quotient of powers. Let's just remind ourselves. Product of powers, we add the exponents. The quotient of powers, we're going to subtract the exponents. The only difference this time between this and lesson 1-3 is that we're going to have negative numbers to work with. So we're going to have to use our rules for adding and subtracting integers to help us with this. So in the example, we have 2 to the second power times 2 to the negative fourth power. Now remember that 2 is our base, and we know that bases stay the same. So we're going to have 2 to the 2 plus negative 4 power. Now, for those of you who know your integer rules real well, you know that this is going to be 2 to the negative second power because 2 plus negative 4 is negative 2. Now, 2 to the negative second power, we learned earlier in this lesson, can be written as 1 over 2 to the second, or we could say 1 over 4, 1/4. The second example is division. So the quotient of powers rule says we're going to subtract. Now W is our base, and we know that our base stays the same. So W equals negative 2 minus negative 4. When we use our subtraction rule, we remember same opposite opposite, so we get negative 2 plus 4. And now we're adding different signs. We know we cannot add those two numbers together. We actually subtract them. So 4 minus 2 is 2. Let's take those equal signs out. It's a little confusing. Negative 2 plus 4. 4 minus 2 is 2. So W to the second power will be our answer. If you want to rewrite that out here so it makes sense, we've got W to the negative 2 minus negative 4 equals W to the negative 2 plus 4 equals W to the second power. So that's just, our answer is W to the second power. Take a minute and pause the video and look down at the practice problems. There are 4 of them. Remember, when you are multiplying, you're going to add the exponents. Your bases are going to stay the same. When you're dividing, you're going to subtract the exponents, and your bases are going to stay the same. Take a few minutes, work those practice problems, and then come back so we can finish our lesson. right, now that you've had an opportunity to work those practice problems, bring all of your problems to class tomorrow so we can check your notes and check your understanding of the concepts, and then we'll work on the homework together.